Hi, I'm Neil Beck. I was a doctor in Perth, Western Australia for 53 years, now retired, only working 50 hours a week. I worked in hospitals at first and then for many years was a family doctor in the suburbs of Perth, helping to bring 800 new babies into the world, doing lots of tonsillectomies and appendicectomies and vasectomies and thousands, 500,000 consultations, home and hospital visits. And I also had my own addiction clinic for 5 years where I treated over 5,000 addicts in over 40,000 consultations. And what did I learn? I was interested to know what gave people a good life and what were the problems of the people who suffered most and got the worst treatment. The things that gave people a good life in order of importance, I thought, were being mentally healthy, mostly feeling good, thinking clearly, having good habits and no bad habits. Secondly, enough good relationships. People need people. Loneliness is as dangerous as 15 cigarettes a day, and people who are lonely get old quicker, sick younger, and die younger. The third thing was to have a high level of happy chemistry. We've got about 25 chemicals in our brain that help to make us happy, and happiness goes with healthiness. Those 25 chemicals are over 20 endorphins. Endorphins are endogenous morphines. Yes, we produce morphine type chemicals in our brain and body, over 20 of them. And then there's also dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin and noradrenaline, about 25 happy chemicals. And the fourth thing, very important thing, was a strong immune system. Our immune system is white cells and antibodies and chemicals in every part of our body that fight infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. And the strength of our immune system depends very much on our lifestyle and on having high endorphins. Our endorphins are very important for maintaining a strong immune system. And if you don't have a strong immune system, you're going to get sick and perhaps die young. The fifth thing was the habit of smiling. It's very important to smile and to laugh. Why is that? That's because you smile and laugh when your happy chemistry is good, and when you smile and laugh, that boosts your happy chemistry even higher. Your brain and your glands produce more happy chemistry when you smile and laugh. So people who smile and laugh a lot have a lot better lives than people who never smile and never laugh. The sixth thing was to know of all the disasters that had happened to your mother and father and their mothers and fathers and their mothers and fathers' mothers and fathers, because disasters in a person's life cause troubles in that family for the next 3 generations. And a lot of people who are troubled today are troubled today because of those disasters that happened through the previous 3 generations of their family. in my family there were 4 early deaths that were disasters, starting with my great-grandmother who died at 42 of cancer. So she had a weak immune system. She'd had 9 children and 3 different fathers of those children, starting with the first son at the age of 16 and at the age of 30 having 2 babies in 10 months. She had a lot of stress. Her immune system was depressed. She got cancer and she died young at 42. And that came down through the family. The last great thing that determines the quality of life is not having any addictions. Addictions are a disaster. So what happened was that in the late 1990s we had a great epidemic of heroin addiction in Perth. We had always had tobacco and alcohol, but nothing much else. Perth is one of the most remote cities, if not the most remote major city in the world. And it wasn't until there were more aeroplanes that we started to get all sorts of other drugs. And heroin became an epidemic in Perth, in which young people told me they were the last person standing in their group of friends, that all their friends had OD'd on heroin. So I thought I'd better get to know a bit about heroin and addiction. And I started to work 10 hours a week in an addiction clinic, which was basically a heroin clinic. And I wanted to know what caused addiction, but they didn't know what caused addiction and didn't seem to care what caused addiction. They were so busy treating people. But in health, you always got to know the causes. If you don't know the causes, it's much harder to get people better. And if you get them better and they've still got the causes, they'll probably relapse. So I went to every addiction clinic in Perth and Sydney and couldn't find a single addiction worker who knew what caused addiction or cared or thought they should know what caused addiction. But I thought they should know what caused addiction. And addicts looked sick to me. And then one day, in the addiction clinic I was working in 10 hours a week, I saw 15 heroin addicts and 5 of them had ADD, ADHD. They'd had ADD, ADHD since early childhood. They'd had difficult childhoods. 40% of them had a parent who was ADD, which caused problems, and a few of them had 2 parents who had ADD. I still remember the hair-raising experience of having a mother and 4 children, all with ADD, coming to my clinic. And I had to see them quick because they caused chaos in the waiting room, and my secretary couldn't cope with them, so I always saw them quickly. And we knew, of course, that the father, who was absent, had ADD as well, because that's the only way that you get 4 children in one family with ADD, is both parents have ADD. And they usually have, the parents usually have poor employment and not very good income, and they continually struggle with money and malnutrition and housing problems and schooling problems. It's a disaster. So when I realized that a third of heroin addicts had ADD, and it was definitely the ADD that caused the heroin addiction, not the heroin addiction that caused the ADD, because they had the ADD from early childhood, but they didn't become heroin addicts until their mid or late teens or 20s. When I discovered that, I went very carefully into the early history of every addict, and I found that 19 out of 20 of them had serious mental health disorders, and they had turned to street drugs when they were not able to get proper diagnosis and treatment of their mental health disorders. There were about 10 common mental health disorders. The commonest was anxiety worry disorders, general anxiety, social anxiety, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, and all sorts of phobias. Then there was sleep disorder. A lot of them slept very poorly. One of them, who claimed he only slept 6 hours a week, I don't think we really know how many hours he slept, but he eventually committed suicide because he got so confused and exhausted because he couldn't sleep. The third thing was major depression. Major depression was common. The fourth thing was ADD, ADHD. The fifth thing was bipolar disorder. The sixth thing was post-traumatic stress disorder. And then there was very low self-esteem. A lot of people with addictions had come from very poor areas, with very poor families, and poor educations. And then there was what I call IAD disorder, irritability, anger, violence disorder. Very common. Didn't seem to have a name, so I gave it that name, IAD, and didn't seem to have a treatment. Lots of them were taking a heap of Valium and Seropax and Mogadon and other things like that, which are benzodiazepines, which are all addictive, but that wasn't a great success. And what I found in the end is that what worked best for them was epilepsy medicine. Some of the IAD, irritability, anger, violence disorder, was just plain bullying. They had discovered one day they got angry about something and shouted and screamed a bit, and everybody did what they wanted. So from there on, when they wanted people to do things, they just got angry. But a lot of people who had IAD did not want to be angry. They did not want to hurt their partner. They did not want to frighten their children. They did not want to risk a breakdown of their marriage. They did not want to risk being homeless or risk being charged for being violent and perhaps even going to prison, perhaps even committing murder, which is the most extreme result of IAD. In Australia now, every 4 days a woman dies due to the IAD of her husband, her partner, or her ex-partner. So it's a very big problem. And then there was another disorder that didn't have a name, so I gave it a name, which was post-trauma evil focus. Post-trauma evil focus. That was people who were so had such a big problem that they couldn't face it, and they distracted themselves from that very big problem by focusing on other problems in faraway places, like Guantanamo Bay, the CIA, or terrible things happening to women and children in some faraway place. A very poor strategy, because before long they found that all their friends, all the people that they related to, also had post-traumatic evil focus. That was a very miserable scene. And what I found in the end was best for those people was to find and focus and fix they're small problems. As everybody's got a very big problem, has got 3, 4 or 5 smaller problems, and they could deal with some of their smaller problems, and every smaller problem they dealt with and fixed made them a little bit happier, a little bit stronger, and a little bit better problem solver. So by the time they'd worked on and fixed 3 or 4 smaller problems, they were sufficiently stronger and happier and more capable of problem solving to face up to the big problem. A couple of other problems were schizophrenia, not very common, but very badly handled, because everybody was so scared and so focused on this terrible problem of hallucinations and delusions and voices that they neglected other very important things. And the most valuable thing I could do for someone with schizophrenia, apart from giving them antipsychotic medicines, which everybody else was doing, was to help them to have friends, to explain to them the importance of having friends, even if the friends got schizophrenia as well. But you've got to have friends, and to have things to do that they liked, because a lot of them were not employed, but they had to have things to do that they liked or loved, and they had to have places to go to that they liked or loved, and that gave them a life, and that reduced their the severity of their schizophrenia. And the other thing was autism. So the DSM-5, the Bible of Psychology, has about 500 mental health problems, but really those 9 or 10 are the really important ones. And one of the problems was that people tended to think they only had one problem, and doctors tended to think they only had one problem, but they never only had one problem. They always had 2 or 3 or 4 problems. If they had ADD, they usually got anxiety and depression, and quite a few of them eventually got bipolar. If they had major depression, a lot of them got anxious, and a lot of them had sleeping problems. If they had panic disorder, a lot of them got depressed and had sleep problems, and money problems, unemployment problems. So it was very important to realize that if you made one diagnosis, that wasn't it. There were other things as well. So, and it was obvious that the great problem was that many people with serious mental health disorders didn't get diagnosis and treatment. There were just not enough mental health care workers to do all the mental health care work that needed to be done. And the people in the better areas with more money and health insurance could often get what they needed, but the poorer people couldn't. And they depended on public clinics, government-free clinics, and those clinics had long waiting lists, and they were rush, and people, a lot of people didn't get mental health care, or didn't get enough mental health care, and ended up in desperation seeking relief on the streets, and the relief on the streets is all addictive. And the characteristic of addictive substances like alcohol and tobacco and heroin and cocaine and ice and crystal meth, and the characteristics of those things is they give great relief in small amounts to begin with, but they never cure anything, and a person's chemistry becomes tolerant or resistant to addictive substances, so they have to take a bit more to get relief, to overcome the tolerance or resistance as well as get relief. And when they take a bit more, their tolerance or resistance gets stronger. And then they have to take more, and then they have to take more and more and more until they're taking a heap of this addictive substance. It's costing them so much money, and it's still not relieving them because their resistance or tolerance has grown so great. But they can't stop because all that foreign addictive chemical has twisted their natural chemistry to accommodate the foreign chemical, and their natural chemistry feels terrible if they suddenly don't get the unnatural chemistry. Their chemistry causes them to suffer awful withdrawal symptoms if they try to suddenly stop. And the old timers in my age group would tell them, go cold turkey, go cold turkey. Just stop, just say no. And I think that's what Ronald Reagan's wife said, just say no. Doesn't work very often. So, what was the solution to all this? The solution was that you have to treat addicts with dual diagnosis, and I couldn't find anyone doing that. Dual diagnosis is you diagnose and treat their mental health disorder at the same time as treating their addiction. But in Perth in the 1970s, very unwisely, they decided to separate mental health and addiction. So the mental health clinics and the addiction clinics. The mental health clinics refused to see addicts. So if you had a mental health illness and you became an addict, you couldn't get treated in the mental health clinic. And the addiction clinics did nothing about mental health. I had to sit in to learn to treat addiction, to sit in one of their big government clinics. And what I learned was not how to treat them, but how not to treat them. Because I saw people with obvious mental health disorders and an addiction getting treated for their addiction and their mental health totally ignored. Nobody got treated for their mental health. And that meant that the only treatment that worked for the addiction was to put them on very addictive medicines. And the treatment for heroin addiction was methadone. And methadone, discovered by the Nazis in 1938, in 1998, 60 years later, was still the main treatment for heroin. And people just went on methadone, and that was supposed to stop them taking heroin. But research showed that half of them still took heroin when they could afford it. Taking methadone enabled them to need less heroin, but 50% of them still took heroin. And the clinics were just full of people coming back for repeat methadone prescriptions. That was completely clogging up the works. And people, methadone was too dangerous to give people a supply of methadone to take home. They had to go to the pharmacy every day to get their methadone treatment, because if they were given a week's treatment to take home, they might take it all and die, or they might sell it to buy some heroin. So they had to keep on going to the pharmacy to get their methadone, which ruined their lives, because when they got up in the morning, it was hard to think about going to work when you were craving methadone and had to go to the pharmacy. And it clogged up the clinics because the clinics were full of people coming back to get a repeat prescription for the methadone. And the big clinic prided itself on the fact that people stayed on methadone on average for 5.5 years. Well, I just hate to think how many of the people who stopped taking methadone stopped taking methadone because they went to prison for committing crime, or they went to a cemetery because they died. Yeah, so the solution was dual diagnosis. And when people got treatment for their mental health at the same time as treatment for addiction, they got better from their addiction much quicker, and many of them didn't relapse. So what was the solution for this whole problem? There were 3 things, I thought, in the end. One was that we needed more tools to treat mental health and addiction. There were only 2 tools, medicine and talk therapy, and they both had big weaknesses. We had to have a complete pack of effective tools to help people get better from mental health and addiction. And the second thing was we had to teach people to help themselves, self-help. The tools had to be suitable for them to help themselves. If you couldn't get help, you had to help yourself. And if enough people could help themselves because the tools were good, then there'd be enough mental health workers to do the rest of the work that people couldn't do themselves. And the third thing was that mental health problems had to be tackled as early as possible. When a mental health problem starts, it's much simpler, the cause is more obvious, the treatment is more obvious and more effective. So what was happening was that the waiting lists were so long and the treatment was often so poor that people didn't go for treatment until they crashed. And when they crashed, they needed so much help that it made the waiting list even longer, and almost nobody got enough help. So, over a 27-year period, I developed 7 tools to treat mental health and addiction more effectively. The first tool was a checklist. When you first see one of these people, you really need an hour, and there's no way I had an hour for all the people that came, because once the word spread that they could get treatment for their mental health at the same time as I got swamped. So we managed to make it quicker by having a 20-question checklist, which one of my assistants would do with new patients first, and then I could see them and deal with their problems in 10 minutes instead of 30, 40 or 50 minutes. Not perfect, but an advance. The second thing was videos. People need to understand what their problems are and what causes them and what helps to make them better. And to explain this to everyone just took too much time, and they often didn't get it the first time. They needed to be told 3 times or 4 times. This is the nature of your mental health problem. This is the cause. This is what helps to make it better. These are the things that make it worse. And there's no faster, better method for people to learn all that than through a video. And my first video, about 14 years ago, I think it was, got 10,000 views in 9 months, and I thought, wow, that's pretty good. So I made 8 more videos, 7 to 15 minutes. But over the years, people stopped watching longer videos, and they were all watching TikTok videos. I thought, I've got to make my videos better, so I went through them very carefully, spent a lot of time, and made 31 7 to 15 minute videos that covered problems in detail, but they didn't look at them either. So then I started to make 1 minute videos, and now I've got nearly 100 1 minute videos on TikTok and other platforms, because each in 1 minute you can only cover one problem. You have to get it word perfect, because if you have any wasted words, it's going to be longer than a minute. As Sir Winston Churchill said, I made a long speech because I didn't have time to prepare a short speech. Well, preparing 1 minute videos is harder than preparing 7 minute videos, but we've now got nearly 100, and I'm revising them all for the 3rd time, and I really believe they're getting better and better. And then there's live streaming, which is what we're doing here now, because a lot of people find live streaming is something that they like and that they learn from. And so I now do live streaming 4 sessions a week. I'm not sure how long I can keep that up, but 7 p.m. on Wednesday, Friday and Saturday evenings, and 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings. It used to be 7 p.m. on Sunday evenings as well, but 7 p.m. Perth time is 9 p.m. Sydney and Melbourne time, but it's 7 a.m. New York time and 4 a.m. LA time and something like that in London. And we were getting quite a lot of people from the US and Canada and the UK and Sweden and other places, so I knew I had to do at least 1 session a week in the morning Perth time, which was in the evening in the Northern Hemisphere. So checklist videos, live streaming, and then of course websites. My first website wasn't actually the first one, but the most recent substantial one is mentalhealthvideos.a2z.com. mentalhealthvideos.a2z.com. And that was about 14 pages and a lot of details, and eventually we had to do a shorter one as well. That one's still there, mentalhealthvideos.a2z.com, but we've also now got smilefixit.com, which on one page has got everything, and you can just tap the links to whatever you need more detail about. And then we realized that an app would be much better than a checklist. A checklist was a great advance, but it still required a second person. It still required people to come to the clinic at clinic times, and that was a problem. And what they really needed was an app on their phone in their pocket. that they could go to anytime, anywhere, and find the 1-minute videos that help their particular problems, because everybody's got different problems. So we did the Mental Fix-It app, and that asks 38 questions about every aspect of mental health and addiction, or all the most important aspects, and each question had 3 answers, and you just had to tap your choice of those 3 answers, and you could go tap through the 38 questions in about 10 minutes. But that was too long. Not enough people were doing the app. So we then cut the 38 questions to 19 questions and made it a 5-minute app. And now we're revising it to make it a 2-minute app, because we know that that's the only way we'll get a lot of people who really need to do an app to find out what their problems are and prioritize them, is to make it a 2-minute app. I think we'll be able to do that in March on both iPhones and Androids. So videos, an app, websites, live streaming. And the next tool is powder medicines. Why powder medicines? Because powder medicines are so much faster and better than tablets and capsules. There are only 2 tools for this massive problem of mental health and addiction: medicines and talk therapy. And both of those 2 things had 2 major problems. The problem with medicines was, the first problem was that people with mental health problems want medicine that work quickly, make them better, and they can stop taking. But the problem is that the pharmaceutical industry wants them to take as much medicine as possible for as long as possible. So they make a lot of medicines addictive. Virtually all the medicines for the commonest problem, worry, anxiety problems, are addictive. It took me years to find one that wasn't. And those same medicines, nearly all the medicines for sleep disorders are addictive. And the 3 main medicines for ADD, ADHD are addictive. That's Ritalin, dexamphetamine, and Adderall. Terrible problem. And in the end, I developed non-addictive medicines for every mental health and addiction problem, which were all out of patent, so low cost. The other problem with medicines is that tablets and capsules are often too slow for mental health and addiction problems. When you swallow a tablet or a capsule, it takes half an hour to an hour to go right down your gut and start to be absorbed into your bloodstream and go to where the medicine is needed. Half an hour to an hour to start, and 1 to 2 hours to get strong. Too slow. If you're trying to go to sleep, or you're trying to avoid panic attacks, or trying to avoid social phobia, or coping with a post-traumatic stress disorder attack. But powder, if you drop powder medicine on your tongue and suck it and don't swallow it, it starts to work in 5 minutes. Your tongue is pink because the blood vessels are so near the surface, and if you drop thousands of tiny granules of powder medicine on your tongue and suck it, don't swallow it, it gets straight into those tongue blood vessels, into your circulation and to your brain or wherever it's needed, starting in 5 minutes and strong in 10 to 15 minutes. And also, if the medicine tastes very good, you'll like taking it, and your body will create what's called taste conditioning. Your body connects that nice taste with starting to get better in 5 minutes, and then you develop a placebo effect, which is a real effect, that as soon as you taste the medicine, as soon as it reaches the taste buds in the back of your tongue, you start to get better, even before the medicine's absorbed. Taste conditioning. You've probably heard about Pavlov's dogs. Pavlov was a Russian psychologist who 100 years ago discovered taste conditioning with dogs. But I found it worked very well, far better for medicines for mental health and addiction. And the next tool was pocket dispensers, because powder in a bottle with a little scoop was pretty cumbersome, a bit inaccurate, a little bit dangerous, and it was much better when I designed these pocket powder medicine dispensers, which you've got the medicine that you need in your pocket wherever you are, whenever you need it, any time, anywhere. Whiz it out and drop a dose on your tongue, or as many doses as you need. So that helped the speed, but it also helped to find the exact best dose for each individual person. The exact best dose varies a lot with how much you weigh, how efficiently you absorb the medicine, how quickly you burn it, how quickly your kidneys and your liver excrete it. And if you don't get enough medicine, it doesn't work very well, and if you get too much, you get side effects. And capsules you can't break. They might make 2 or 3 different strengths, but that's still not exact enough. It's too hard to find the right amount and then to get the right amount. And tablets, they might make in a couple of different sizes, and you might be able to break them in halves, even quarters, but it's still hard to find and then to get your right dose. But with the powder medicine, the first batch we gave people was weak, and they would take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 doses of the weak strength and find out exactly how many doses worked best for their problem, that gave them the best result with the least side effect, and then we'd know exactly how much they needed, and we could give them powder of the right strength. So they got the best result with the least side effects. And also with powder, we could mix 2 or 3 or 4 powders together, which was much more powerful than single medicines, because everybody who's got a big problem has got 2 or 3 or 4 problems, and one tablet is just not enough for them. And if you give them a prescription for 3 or 4 different tablets, they often get them mixed up. They're too expensive because each tablet as a separate prescription, it costs you a lot of money. But with powder, powder is much cheaper than tablets. All medicines start as powder, or nearly all medicines start as powder, and turning them into tablets or capsules of exactly the right size, it costs as much as making the powder. And people said that the pocket dispensers look expensive, but they're not, they're cheap. So bulk powder in a pocket dispenser is nearly half the cost of a single medicine, and 2, 3 or 4 powders combined is a fraction of the cost of 2, 3 or 4 tablets. And people get 2, 3 or 4 tablets mixed up and get into trouble. But with powder, with 2, 3 or 4 medicines that cover 2, 3 or 4 mental distresses and an addiction craving, not exactly precise, but far better, far more effective, and gets people feeling much better, much faster, and then able to cut their craving and to reduce, to weaken their addiction, and eventually to break their addiction. So the seventh tool is a heartbeat meditation aid. Meditation is so valuable for mental health problems. Meditation helps people to calm and relax and rest and get stronger, and it alters the epigenetics of their brain, and their brain works better. But the people who most need to learn to meditate because they're so distressed and upset often can't learn to meditate with the usual techniques. The usual techniques is you focus on your breathing, and while you're focusing on your breathing you can forget the other things, except the other things are aggravating, so you don't focus on the breathing very long, because breathing is not a very mind-grabbing thing. Or they give you a word and you repeat the word again and again and again, and as you're repeating the word you stop thinking about all your problems and have a rest. But a word is probably more mind-grabbing than focusing on your breathing, but not mind-grabbing enough. And I'd been listening to people's hearts with stethoscopes for 50 years. I knew that the heartbeat is loud and attention-grabbing with a good stethoscope. So I cut a stethoscope short, and people, that's the hearing part, you put it down under your clothes and you listen to your heart, and that's strongly mind-grabbing, and you can more quickly learn to stop thinking about your problems, and you can more quickly learn to meditate. And after a month or two of that, you can gradually convert to meditating, focusing on your breathing, which is the best, because everywhere you go you've got your breathing. You can focus on your breathing when you're driving a car. You can focus on your breathing anytime, anywhere. And breathing steadily is very important. Your emotions are very much attached to your breathing. When something bad happens, you hold your breath. And when you go to sleep, just before you go to sleep, if you notice, you'll notice your breathing gets very even. In, out, very even. So breathing steadily is a valuable thing to learn to use in any situation, and to help you to meditate and to help you to go to sleep. We've got an eighth tool, of which this is a prototype, and it has it's a bigger pocket dispenser, which we put fruit powder in, and it's especially helpful for people who have problems with putting too much stuff in their mouth, whether it's sugar, biscuits, cakes, lolly water, because we're having an epidemic of obesity, diabetes and blocked arteries due to fat and sugar blocking the arteries and causing heart attacks and strokes and gangrenous feet and so on. But it's also helpful for people trying to stop smoking and drinking too much alcohol and taking other drugs by mouth. When you think of smoking or drinking or eating cakes and chocolate and lollies or drugs, you just whiz it out, drop a lovely gram of fruit powder. My favorite is vanilla, and you just focus on that instead of doing the other thing. And when the taste starts to wear off, you have another taste, and you can break bad habits. The way you break bad habits is you delay them and you weaken them. You delay them and you take a little bit less. So with smoking, if you can put off smoking for 15 minutes and you can smoke 3/4 of the cigarette and then throw the rest away, that will weaken your smoking addiction. And you can gradually weaken it more and more and more. And you can reduce smoking fairly easily by 1/4 every 1 to 3 weeks. And in a month or 2 months or 3 months, you can stop smoking fairly easily. And then you can prevent relapses by still carrying the fruit powder in your pocket. We're getting 5,000 of these made in Ningbo in China, and they should be ready in sometime, probably the end of March or the beginning of April. I've got 40 of these prototypes which I'm sending out to Weight Watchers, and we'll start to send out to diabetic clinics as well. Got a couple more tools in mind that I'm working on, but I'll explain to them when the time comes. But the solution to the mental health crisis, which is causing the addiction crisis, is better tools. 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 effective tools that people can do self-help, so they can do a lot of the work that now goes to mental health workers, of which there are not enough. And people can start to do their self-help as soon as a problem arises. My goal is to make it very common for people with a mental health problem to get far better in 10 minutes. In a few seconds, they whiz their phone out of their pocket and they tap the App Store or the Google Play button, and in a few seconds download the free Mental Fix It app. In 2 minutes, they tap their answers to the app questions about their mental health and addiction. And as at the end of 2 minutes, in a few seconds, they read the instant report that comes up on the screen of their phone, and the instant report includes links to the 6 of our 100 videos, 1-minute videos that will help them their particular problems most. Which 6 of the 100 videos will help their particular problems most, and they can just tap on those 6 videos and watch those 600-minute videos in 6 minutes. So in 10 minutes they know what their problems are, they know which are the most serious, and they've got the problems are listed in descending score order, and they've seen a video on each of them, so they understand, start to understand each problem and its cause and its best management and treatment. And if they need to, and they usually need to, they can watch a video on a particular problem, their worst problem, or the problem they feel that they want to deal with now, 2, 3 or 4 times at once, and again the next day, and again the next day, until it's very clear in their mind. And they've been able to explain it to their family and their friends, some of whom got the same problem, and they help one another. Well, I think that's enough for today. So I'm sorry I don't have time to talk to everyone, but what I'm very interested in know what you think and what you feel and the questions you've got and any criticisms you've got. And please send them those feelings, thoughts, questions, criticisms through the platform you watch the live streaming on, or through our email address for that problem. Our email address for that is healthestuff@gmail.com, healthestuff@gmail.com, spelt how it's pronounced. And if you don't remember it, just look at our short website, smilefixit.com, and you'll find the email address there, and email us. And every night after a session of live streaming, I go through all the new followers, all the likes and all the comments, and we preserve the most helpful clips of the live streaming so that you can watch them, and we respond to all those things, as many as we can. We can't respond to people who we don't have a link to, but we try to give answers and greetings to as many people as possible, both after the live streaming session and the next day. So enough for today, Saturday evening, and I'll be back again at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on Sunday.